So, let's start. Dear friends, I'm happy to welcome you at Moscow Financial Forum and our panel discussion, which, within the frames of which we will have to lively discuss for several hours, and one of the themes is availability and quality of budget services and availability and quality with the help of social certificate. Actually, the sector of social services in our country is developing quite actively, and you can see that in the recent time, more and more actively, non-governmental or public organizations come to the stage. Some public organizations, and I would like to remind you that President of our country, Mr. Putin, pays a lot of attention to development of public sector in our country. And a couple of years ago, namely by the initiative of the President, huge work was started on equalizing availabilities of private and public institutions to provide social services, because the main thing for us is consumer, is a human being who receives this service. The service should be of high quality, the service should equally cost for the state, and who is providing that service, private or public sector, for consumer is not that much important. It's important for the consumer to have this service in a convenient place, for the service to meet the requirements, and President made a task to help public sector to get into this process, and it's not easy. And public sector, who is this? It's us, it's citizens, active citizens, initiative citizens who get united and start helping each other in non-commercial organizations, or they start dealing with some public sphere. They open the organization and provide business services, and we understand that this is sector of growth. And the legislation in our country has changed dramatically a lot, and we also got such a term, executor of publicly useful services. We got registers, we got new financial tools, and today we see that scarce of qualitative financial tools which really could provide equal access for private and public sector, which would make it possible for a consumer to personally select supplier of this service, actually stumbles development of this segment. And today actually we are going to speak about a new mechanism, social certificate, which, as we believe, would make it possible for us to strengthen and get rid of actual gaps in the current policy, and to implement support of public sector, and on the other hand, without considerable risk, to provide same support for state sector, which has always been there and will be, and answering the question whether state sector will be able to keep up with the competition and what we can rely on while addressing to public organizations. So we'll discuss with our today's experts, and I'm happy to introduce them to you. Alexei Lavrov, Deputy Minister of Finance of Russian Federation. Natalia Komarova, Governor of Khanty-Mansiysk Autonomous Region. Andrei Nikitin, Governor of Novgorodsky Region. Olga Zabralova, First Deputy Chief of Government of Moscow Region, Minister of Education of Moscow Region, and Lvov Dukhanin, Member of Parliament of State Duma of the Russian Federation, Equal Capabilities for Children. Marina Rakova, Deputy Minister of Education of the Russian Federation. Yelena Topoleva-Soldunova, Member of Public Chamber of the Russian Federation. The selection of today's heads of region is not a chance one, because Khanty-Mansiysk Autonomous Region and Moscow region participate by their own initiative and experiment with social certificates from 2016, and those are the people who know about risks, pluses and minuses of the system, and they will share this information based on their experience. And since 2018, these two regions are involved in the experiment which is done by Ministry of Finance of the Russian Federation. Novgorod region since 2018 is working together with Ministry of Education on social certificates and additional education, and from 2019 was also involved in the experiment of a Ministry of Finance. Before we move on to discussion, I would like to introduce myself. I will be moderating this discussion. Olga Batalina, First Deputy of Secretary of General Council of United Russia Political Party, of the Deputy of State Duma, and I would like to start our discussion with a nice thing. Ministry of Finance, jointly with profiled ministries. This is Ministry of Education of the Russian Federation and Ministry of Labor of the Russian Russian Federation, analyze the results of implementation of new mechanisms of organizations of public and municipal services, which are presupposed by two national projects, that is education and demography area. Ministry of Finance selected best practices, and today, in such a beautiful atmosphere in our professional audience, I would like to give awards to the best. So, as the results of contest arranged by Ministry of Finance, practice of best mechanism providing state services in the sphere of additional education, professional education, diploma, and is given to government of Khanty-Mansiysk Autonomous Region. Natalia Vladimirovna, you are welcome. And the results of the contest by Ministry of Finance together with Ministry of Labor, best practices implementations of new mechanism organization in state services in re-education sphere for pre-rental age citizens is given to the government of the Moscow region. Thank you, dear colleagues, and we move on with the discussion. So, Alexei Mikhailovich, I have the first question to you. Let's see. There are regions which work with social certificates from 2016. There is a federal law or there is no federal law. They are not prevented to work with this. And you give wonderful prizes to them, and they have something to take pride in, and they reach results. So then a question today, in conditions of the active legal field, is it possible to use social certificate? And today, subjects of the Russian Federation take decisions whether there are any obstacles and why do we need to establish federal legislation, whether it will be a bundle for region or there are any problems for the regions which are doing that. Honorable Olga Yurievna, honorable colleagues, the answer to this question can consist of two parts. So if we consider problem with duties segregation, there is a fundamental definition. Other issues non-regulated by the sphere jointly controlled by federal subjects is directed to municipal level, and whether this social services provision is in the competence of the subjects of municipal institutions. Of course it is there, and whether there is some federal regulation towards that, there is no federal regulation. And judging by these two prerequisites, we can make a conclusion. It means that subjects of federation can take decisions independently, can independently control the sphere, and lots of subjects of federation used this right, and the results were very good. So this is one side, and the other side is that we have a constant tendency to double-check everything and to ask, why do you take these or that decisions? Find a paper, find a document where it will be said that you can do that. And from this point of view, any subject of federation which is doing this kind of regulation is kind of brave, is kind of icebreaker, making the way for other subjects of federation, and they can be scratch or it can get lost in the ice. So we believe that at this stage we could have go without a regulation, but we still get more and more totally practical issues. And what kind of requirements are provided for these certificates? What kind of financial liability for the budget for the supplier of the services? How can we control mechanism of mutual responsibility and so on and so forth? And the subjects of federation which are searching for the answers, they say that they can solve this question in a different way, and they do it in a different way. And it's good because we develop best practices and the wrong solutions are not used, and we remember positive examples. Those that didn't enter that have quite wide choice. Which tool to use, which tool is better, and what we can use as a link making this or that legal act. And having reached this specific moment when we can actually use widely developed practice of social certificates, we came to a conclusion that we should make frame legislation. Frame legislation which, number one, would not stumble subjects of federation implementing their own ideas in this sphere, providing for all the subjects of federation clear-cut, unified, comprehensive approach, so that everyone well, if not completely identical approach, but similar, at least, regulation, for whom it is important? It's important for consumer, first of all. Well, it can be a situation when a consumer came to another region or just moving around the country, getting serviced by social certificate in a different region, or just a supplier who is working in several regions. So everyone should have a clear understanding that they would face the same issues, the same regulation. It's important for preserving of unified social space, unified economical space, mobility and other issues. There is another theme. Now federal bodies are actively involved in these certificates, and here we also have a situation if a subject of a federation and then we would only mix everyone up, and this sphere would bring these results. And the first thing that we suggest to make a draft of law, which is ready for second session in State Duma, and then we could call it a draft of law for social law. This is for all participants of this project, unified frame requirements. That principal position of government developer of a draft of law consists in the fact that we do not need totally precise regulation of all the details. And the situation is different regarding all the services, regarding different subjects of federation, and that the authorities of the subjects of federation and modification of general principles should take place. Andrei Sergeyevich, as it was said by Alexei Mikhailovich, controlled bodies are pressing you in the eyes, and as a region you also need federal law. For a year and a half of your experience in Novgorod region, what does it prove? Well, thank you very much. Until now they are not like pressing us, but there were some clashes between us, but we are going forward. The ship is moving forward, and that is a curious experience for us. I will briefly say what we have done. We started with vacation and medication of children, ill children. If they came to a camp for a daytime at specialized organizations, now they go to some camps outside the city, to sport camps. Those who can go to camps with tents, children are satisfied, parents are satisfied. Now it's not like an obligation, you go only this way. If you are disabled, you go to this way only. Parents started considering capabilities of the region. They totally differently arrange this format of summer vacation. This is our authority, and as to our regional authority, we have shifted technical means of rehabilitation to certificates as well, and it was quite a successful process for additional education, 50 plus. We have two mechanisms. If either we provide subsidies to employers or certificate to employee. So just to compare, out of 500 people who should receive certificate this year, 285 people, it's more than our plan, already received these certificates, and only 4 organizations for 4 people turned for subsidies. So people of silver age also want to get educated, not regardless of the fact whether they work. They want to get the certificate and select additional profession the way they are comfortable. And starting with this year, actually starting with 2018, we introduced personalized certificate for education, professional education. This is an interesting project. It's interesting from the point of view that we receive totally honest picture how it really works with professional education. People vote by their certificate. They come to a place where they are interested, where they have a modern equipment. And until now, we made it at municipal level what we've faced. We faced that there is totally different cost established by a municipality for professional education, and from this year we will bring it into unified multiplier, and we would not like to get different opportunities for children depending on the region where they are located. This year 16 out of 22 municipal institutions belong to our project, and we see that the project is of course successful, and we'll see that we are going to equalize it, of course from the point of view of cost, to consider so that nobody would be left behind. And you know, you have mentioned a very interesting question about how that influence to private sector. private sector participates in this work with us, but what we get, as the statistics say, seeing competition, our state municipal institutions of additional education started to compete, and now we see transition from private sector to public sector. So it influenced public sector a lot from the point of view of operation with quality. Initially, there was a flow to private sector, and the most active leaders of different cultural centers saw that immediately, and they rapidly increased quality. They dramatically increased the quality of service, and now they have true competition which actually is for the benefit of our children in Novgorod region. Thank you. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. And now a question to everybody who would like to join our discussion. And I would like to say immediately, we have not scientific and practical conference. Regardless of the fact whether you are sitting in the audience and at the stage, you have equal opportunities to participate in discussion. You can always raise your hand and get involved into discussion of the thing you are interested in and whether you like to add something or not. From this year, we have social certificates which are in use here in training of pre-rental age citizens. This is a new experience, and I have a question to those who are present among the audience. Well, when you certify these relations, when you create these certificates, do you face any difficulties and do you see any needs of additional federal regulation for the borders, for the parameters, for protection, finally, which was mentioned by Alexey Mikhailovich? Are there anyone willing to share something? Please provide a microphone. Please introduce yourself. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Head of Chief Department of State Labor Service in Tomsk region. Well, I would like to share the experience of Omsk region in the usage of educational certificates while arranging professional education and additional professional education of citizens in pre-rental age for the national project, a demographical project. We started this work from this year as well as all other subjects, and from this year we started using two mechanisms. This is Federal Law 44 and mechanism of providing subsidies to employers. And during the implementation process, we realized these two mechanisms do not solve the issue in full-fledged, which is put forward by a national project, and we started elaborating mechanism to use these certificates. Moreover, federal legislation makes it possible to reach that. What are we deciding? By using these certificates, we solve three tasks. Number one, we satisfy requirements of employers who are oriented for practical training of citizens. We get rid of the necessity to provide procurement activity. And number three, we operatively react to requirements of participants of labor market participants. And the problem here, while developing this mechanism, was the definition of kinds and codes and kinds of expenses in budget classification. Mainly subjects which use certificates for today in this direction use mechanism of subsidies. Well, in our opinion, this mechanism is not very suitable for us, or actually was not suitable for us at all, as long as it limits possibilities of participating of public institutions, and number two, it limits opportunities of citizens to select educational institution. Moreover, the nature of certificate presupposes this advantage, and as a result of very long discussions with the Ministry of Finance of Omsk region. So, which conclusion you came to? Well, it's possible to use expenses by Article 332 for the social provision of citizens. And still, when we came to this consensus with the Ministry of Finance, we, in quite a short period of time, distributed more than 500 certificates. Just briefly, the scheme is as follows. A citizen applies for a labor center to get this certificate. At that, he selects educational institution he would like to have training. He selects the educational program for his qualification, for kinds of training and terms of training. The cost of certificates depends on the program and on the time frame of the training. A citizen within 30 working days should start training since he gets the certificate. Also, there is an agreement between a labor center, employer, educational institution. Who else is involved? Who is number 4? Employer, citizen, educational institution, and labor center. So we have sent to professional training.
And we already started to work with quite a number of citizens to implement these programs. And we think that by the month of November, we are going to enroll quite a big number of people for that matter. At the same time, it's worth mentioning that we really try to optimize our cost related to that, and we hope that the means that will be spent for that will be really spent efficiently, because we have quite a targeted reasons, and we have quite a clear vision of the national program, of the national project. Okay, speaking about the national certificate, what is the price of that? Because the price itself is just a certificate that allows you to spend a number of money, etc., that was fixed by the federal system for this or that matter. What should be the price of the certificate, just to make sure that on one hand, we're quite satisfied with the price, and at the same time, we have quite a number of options for this or that matter. We need to understand how it should be organized. On the other hand, we also understand that there should be some limits, also budgetary limits, and if we are limited, we have a certain budget pool, and at the same time, otherwise there will be a higher price of the pool or a bigger number of the participants. A very important point, if we have, for example, a high price of the certificate for a number of projects, we understand that the competition will be higher and higher, and the interest also will be higher of the state. Shouldn't we think that it's a little bit too high? High for the competition, and maybe it will even oust the state sector. If we have a guaranteed interest, if we have something, specific for the consumer, and the consumer understand that they can come over and to ask for something, and of course that will lead to some more important marketing strategies with participation, not always state structures. Elena Sodnova, I would also like to address this question to you. How can we strike this balance where we can, strike the one between consumers' requests? How we can strike the gold mean? What should be the price of it? First and foremost, I should say that we cannot state that some people from some of the state structures have more expensive services, and we shouldn't think that actually that with this all those more expensive certificates they can attract more people. I would say that it's quite a little bit different. It could be the case in the meaning, and we have already discussed with the colleagues, and we say that actually it motivates people and motivates budgetary establishments to develop different marketing strategies and think more about promoting their strategies. And for example, yesterday we had quite an interesting meeting with Tatiana Golikova. We talked about different social strategies, and we talked about Bashkiria. It has always been quite an issue with us. we had quite an intense situation, and the point is that the organization working in the sphere of social organizations, they can be what transform a little bit, but the point is that such organizations, they compete more and more with each other, which is really great because it's make them boost of their impetus a little bit, and when they understand that they can compete in order to provide better impetus for their suppliers, for their consumers, I think that it could somehow motivate them, improve the quality of the services that they provide. But I would say that it's more about the future, and talking about today, talking about the situation that we live in today, what was mentioned yesterday during the meeting, during the discussion, etc. When we talk about social protection, about many other things, when we talk about it's like a mass production process. When we see very good perspective with these certificates, etc. I wouldn't say that they just decide to jump into it and to do something with that. Unfortunately, we still have a lot of financial barriers. Not just yesterday, but also, I mean, many times ago, we said that we had quite a problem with some governmental suppliers, for example, low barriers. They are formed somehow for different services, and we don't have the very good methodology in place, and we understand that it should be somehow organized by the regions, by different establishments, and somehow we don't understand why the difference is so high, and we don't understand how they form. This process is not transparent at all. And another point is that we have quite a problem with financial demands. At the chamber, we have quite a number of requests from different non-commercial organizations, from public organizations, that those who even manage to overcome different barriers, who manage to make it to a certain level, but at the same time, they still have quite a problem when they hear that we never thought that you are going to have such a number of, consumers and supply. How are they supposed to tackle with that? We need to find an issue, to find a solution to that, and to think about how we should organize competition at this very level. No wonder that I actually ask this question in this way, this kind of phantom problems, when we start to implement it in different levels, but of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that we will manage to find a way out. But how we can find a way out at the local level, etc. Sometimes we hear that we will have a problem with the budget, and also we hear that we will also have a problem with the insurance parts, etc. It's not always a part of life. I have to travel a lot to different regions, and the major answer to us regarding the non-state answer, it's always the same. Dear friends, you see that you treat these financial issues a little bit differently. Should we put a little bit differently, and should we think a little bit differently about capital expenditures, etc.? What about the subsidies? We also need to think about it, because it's a part of repairs, etc. We also need to consider it, otherwise we won't be registered in the register. But thanks to the system that we have, we understand that it's not quite feasible. Alexei Mikhailovich, what about you as a representative of Ministry of Finance? Do you understand that this problem is quite there? How are you working on that problem? It's a part of our reality, really, and in many entities where we have problem with this social certificates, etc. We understand that the financial support of those autonomous entities, yes, it's very good, but at the same time we have a lot of concealed expenditures that are not really covered, very transparently pronounced, and we understand that it should be done a little bit different. You know that capital repairs, for example, sometimes it is done and we put it as, a part of capital repairs, etc., and so on and so forth, and that is why it is not quite deliberately, considerably covered. We need to understand that we have a certain price for the service and we have certain risks, but they are not always covered. What about the lack of financing? There are certain risks related to that. And we think that the law project that we're talking about should be analyzed very carefully. It should be, the price of it should be absolutely equal to something that we have already discussed. We need to understand what the prime cost of it is. It should be carefully analyzed by the budgetary organization, etc. I would say that we wouldn't have to have this budgetary service and to analyze the number of people who could apply for this competition. That would be absolutely clear for the citizens, just to have a clear understanding of the citizens. But they will have to agree that they should have a substitution that would be a little bit different from the system that we have, that would cover all the expenses that we should have. But the problem is that the budgetary organization, I would say that this is a cross subsidiary.
The students on paid basis and on free basis just try to understand what kind of tariff is there. Formally, it should be the same, formally, but actually what is happening that it happens within one organization, and the model works quite successfully in higher education. We see true competition between public universities. It's very important, public and private and public universities, and there is a right to of selection for a consumer. And if we specify it in legislation and that the net cost should be equal, and then we would somehow elaborate this system, the problem will be solved. And now we should make one important step to specify equality in legislation, equality of suppliers of different kind while providing budget services. Then there is a long way of adjustment of tuning specific norms and regulations. And what is mentioned, Helena Andreevna, when we are speaking about non-payments, we hear this theme and we cannot understand whether agreement on provision subsidies for compensation is there or not. If it's there and it says that during 1 year we must send this kind of subsidy, and we believe even no matter paper or digital way, I cannot understand how budget can fail to pay this debt. And if if it's not there, then, well, thanks for your work, but the money was substituted for some time, and then we've run out of money. Well, and then certificate will also solve this problem. This is a legally arranged obligation of budget to pay, namely the sum of money which is specified in the certificate, and we don't need any additional things. Certificate given, money received. The budget has an obligation at the moment of issuing the certificate. Then the budget got a legal obligation provided by all the necessary procedures and liability to pay this certificate. So a problem of non-payment for certificates should be solved. Well, thank you very much. Considering the fact that we have a representative of a public sector as well, I would like to hear your opinion, those who work in private sector. How do you feel this problem from inside? Well, I would like, please introduce yourself. My name is Svetlana Makovetsky. I'm director of Civil Analysis of Independent Research Center. And I should say that, of course, there is inequality of public and private suppliers. And at present moment, it will not be removed by the point that certificates will work. But the certificate is, of course, a step forward to reduce this inequality. What is the specific feature of this inequality? Everywhere where state suppliers have additional expenses related to budget institutions, we will face a situation that for them this work is less profitable generally. For instance, you have correctly mentioned that the tariff does not consider capital costs and necessity of sustainable development of organization, regardless of the kind of certificate. There is a problem related to the fact that public suppliers do not have access to institutional information about potential receivers of qualities, and it's not only a problem of Roskomnadzor who receive access to data, which is personal data, but I believe that this is an issue of interinstitutional cooperation which should be solved, and it means that social advertisement cannot be afforded by public supplier because it's not clear to whom to address by private supplier, and there are a lot of administrative barriers that is taken by the private suppliers in the same way but by public suppliers, and it is related not only to social institutions but for the checks of Ministry of Justice, which are very rigid and which are not into regulatory situation of this year, but there is non-commercial public organization have lots of costs related to that thing, and we have unclear understanding to working positions in public sector, and if we hope for small and mid-sized businesses to be protected in this area with the long-term existence and national projects regarding to that, and as to non-commercial institutions, we face an anecdotal situation. As member of a council and president for the Civil Institution on Human Rights, I was in Krasnoyarsk. We had a round table and we found out a situation in which a non-commercial organization which is involved into protection of rights and providing of services to the families with disabled children, headed by, of course, a woman mother of disabled child. As soon as she became a director without getting a ruble, pension fund of the Russian Federation decided that she got employed and she didn't get her fee for disabled child care, and very often it's not considering specific feature of pulsing finance of private suppliers, and this is a problem. And of course, it's very clear that it's not a problem of certificate, but until now the problem is not solved about social investment climate, how investors can be included into social sphere, and how they're going to finance something related to the activity which is done by public organization, non-commercial organization. This is the issue solved by Agency of Strategic Initiatives, and the problem that we do not understand what kind of economic model works best here. And I would like to express gratitude to the Ministry of Finance and two regions that are present here, Moscow region and Khanty-Mansiysk Autonomous Region, which took liabilities to make research which would make it possible for us to transparently see what kind of financial model should be used in which cases and in which conditions can be used by private and public suppliers of services at the same time. And the last thing, I should say that all public and private suppliers of services face kind of childishness of receivers of services who do not understand what kind of results they should receive from this service, and they got used to visiting this kind of institutions. They cannot select a private supplier of services, even if they work for many years and get services. For them, that is something like replaced, but not by money, but by services. And this is a question of consumer culture and kind of climate, which should be solved jointly. And part of the problems are still there, but there is a step forward. Thank you for this open and frank conversation. It's truly like that. It's not the first complaint when not getting any kind of salary, but being official leader of some organization, pension fund perceives this as employment. So we'll discuss this theme additionally, even outside our panel discussion. I will approach you, Marina Nikolaevna, considering the fact that 42 regions in our experiment for professional education, this is kind of pilot which is implemented into our project, and this ratio of powers, let us say, between private and public sector for this experiment, how did it work as a result of the previous year? Are there any changes in state sector in professional education, and is there scarce of public sector or vice versa it is growing? How do you see it from inside? Thank you, Olga Yurievna. For the current period, we have, as you know, in 2016, for 5th of April 2019, around 1,300,000 certificates were issued, and for today, almost 900,000 children in Russian Federation used this certificate. Speaking about the quantity of the children who used this certificate in private sector, this is around 5,000 people. Most of the suppliers from private sectors is noticed in Khanty-Mansiysk autonomous region, so that is practically 5,000 children who receive this service in private sector. Vologda region, this is more than 1,000 children who are involved in a private sector, and in most of the subjects there is no supplier from private sector. This is Chechnya Republic and Buryatia. No organization at all, and not a single child. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know. It's an evolutionary way, and I can provide bright examples when Moscow companies of private sector take decisions knowing about this problem, about opening affiliated structure in rural area, because there is one house of culture, so to speak, and they have no choice, so they see this market. It takes place. It happens in Tyumen region, in Khanty-Mansiysk autonomous region, but in most cases I should say that this program results in the fact that the quality of services increases for the suppliers of state sector, of public sector. Now we are limited only by 25% from general amount of consolidated budgets directed via this kind of financial mechanism, and state sector starts fighting for this 25%. And I should say that now, listening to you, I'll take 2 more minutes of your time. Of course, there are problems, and of course, lots of things must be calculated, and Ministry of Finance is doing that constantly, introducing some amendments, offering alternative models of cooperation with the regions. But it's important for us as parents, now I'm speaking about my sector, about education, to understand that this tool has huge resource, and it is located not only in the area of the kind of additional education for children, but first of all, we would like to provide freedom of choice according to our constitutional right, and also liability to, there was only one incident in our country, to general education. It's not a secret that starting from 6th or 7th grade, all parents really want education to meet capabilities and interests of our children. And a huge number of children visits additional classes on mathematics in universities. Andrei Sergeyevich is going to open Novgorod Technical School, where will be fantastic specialists, smartest of production training, and the most front-end technological equipment. They will train specialists for using these technologies in life. And example of Moscow region, location of Physical Technical University in Dolgoprudny. Of course, children go there, but how to make it so that the state and municipalities would not have double financing, overlapping of finance, because the subjects should invest additional money so that additional task for some specific subject would take place in Novgorod Technical School, or mathematics in Physical Technical University. Why? Out of the amount of guaranteed amount of assignments by state guarantee cannot allocate specific means for a child to get identified that the technology will be done in this institution and mathematics in university. This is a trend for world challenge that we have. Personalization of education via, of course, clear-cut financial mechanism when every citizen can use the assignments from the state which are guaranteed to get the best, the most qualified education in the world. Thank you. By the way, a very important note is it's important that not only private sector, but other institutions of public sectors which are not directly included in the system of additional education due to certificates can provide such like services. Whether our children could yesterday, before certificates were used, go to mathematical school for free at Moscow State University. They could not, because it's not a system of additional education, and we cannot open mathematical school in Moscow State University due to means of additional education, and certificate provides this opportunity for selection. Natalia Vladimirovna, for many times Khanty-Mansiysk autonomous region was called as the front end, and the figures that were provided by Marina Nikolaevna as to the quantity of private organizations and the amount of services they have provided, it's really impressive. And please tell about this experience, and please help me as moderator and every other participants to understand in these conditions how public sector feels. Well, I thought, well, there is unreasonable for you to have the floor, and we'll give the floor to another speaker. No, it will never happen. Thank you very much. We'll prepare your experience. Well, good afternoon, dear colleagues. We have very good conversation. We have found lots of localized points, and starting from these points, we can elaborate quite seriously about important theme, which is for today's panel discussion. And I would like to say that we work in different ways of involvements of private organization into state and municipal services provision. That is state orders, subsidies, this is compensation for expenses on services provision, and these are certificates. We work with certificates. Thank you very much for this coverage that regions got in 2016 from Ministry of Finance, but we've been in this system from 2012, and I would like to mention that we have started at a very popular direction, and unexpectedly this sphere of social service, not education or no other progressive industry of social activity, but looks like it's clear it is protocoled some social service. Well, we have a huge problem overall in the world, in the country, and in our region related to the fact that having identified that we need to get united, we believed the non-commercial organization in this sphere in providing servicing for rehabilitation, for treatment who are suffering from drug addiction. It's also kind of political systematic step which would unite all the society. And we have implemented these certificates. I would like to mention that this is not a simple sphere, as you must have noticed, great interest of legal bodies to this activity. And however, we managed to overcome that and get allies in this structure, in this activity. And well, furthermore, now 50 services were given to private sector. Out of them, 9 services are provided via certificates. This is highest number in the sphere of social service provision, 7 in education, and +1 in Nizhnevartovsk pilot for summer vacation of children. And for that reason, we have this kind of experience. I saw this project immediately in the performance.
And I think that we will do that. In this sense, I would like to state that I think that you mentioned that we have only 10 or 19 or plus something. We have on the system of certificates. It's not that easy as that, because when we think about the certification problem, we understand that we need to work with different norms, with different certificates, etc. We need to get the right amount of funding, etc. We need to think about municipal markets, etc. For example, if we talk about educational system for preschoolers, for example, yes, we understand that we need to boost our financing to a certain amount, and at the same time, based on that, we need to create a certain certificate-based system that could be characterized and used both for state and non-state sector. And in this sense, I have already talked about this with Andrei, and I said that we somehow switched from the so-called municipal preschool education and started to focus on that, but it should be organized in the right way. I would say quite the opposite, that we also need to think about different educational establishments. For example, those who can be really competitive. It will be really important for preschoolers and for providing such a preschool education. Probably we should think about an opportunity for them to stay within those educational establishments and to stay there if they want to, if they feel that there is a real need for them to be educated there. I'm also talking about different age groups, for example, from 3 to 9, etc. We also discussed this project at Neftejugansk, where we saw, for example, one of the head of the projects where they say that they do not go to municipal, for example, schools because they want to stay in those preschool educational establishments. I think that would be really important for them as one of the opportunities to work with this educational establishment. We need to come up with some norms and some standards where we could have a clear vision of the financial structure of all those things. On one hand, we started off with the thing that the president said that the non-governmental state and sector should be a part of it and be a partner of such an initiative. And I should say that, yes, of course, we are coming closer to 15% right now, to over 2.5 billion. But at the same time, we should think. Could you please bring your microphone a little bit closer? Yes, but on the other hand, we are thinking now about a different thing. What about the municipal sector, about all those things? Wouldn't they ever disappear, etc.? We need to decide on that. I mean, once you stated that there should be a certain work to be accomplished to create a certain market to help the social part of the population, but how can we deal with that? We need to develop certain legislation and different laws to make it possible. Otherwise, I mean, it wouldn't be treated by the people as equal, as fairly important, etc. It shouldn't be done for free. Never, 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 ever. It is never for free. We have already paid for that in form of taxes, etc. And in this sense, it's very important to understand that it should be really mentioned. Irina, you mentioned that over 5,000 kids right now, they get this additional education via non-governmental state, but they are not registered as part of the register. I mean, official state register. It should be somehow tailored. We need to understand how to work with that. What about our statistics? We need to think about this. Really, we need to have some objective data, and if we don't do that, then we won't be able to understand how to work with this data. That should be absolutely clear and transparent. So, just to finalize that, I would like to say that we can see some positive results from all those institutes and establishments. Yes, of course, we can see that certificates are absolutely important. We can involve different non-governmental structures into those activities, and this effect is absolutely important. I think that this effect is really important. I would like to reiterate about it once again, and we talked about it from civil point of view, from geographical point of view. This is something that makes us believe that we are moving in the right direction. And when we think about this and we think about legislation, about the tender, for example, we understand that it should be done somehow correctly, and also it should be done for commercial organization and non-commercial ones. I think that it's very important that we also create a platform for non-commercial organization. We need to have this non-linear platform for them, for this municipal orders, etc., where we could eliminate all those risks, all those administrative barriers, etc. And in this sense, we can talk about more favorable conditions for accessing the markets. If all of a sudden in the future we manage, with the help of our actions, all those municipal activities and educational initiative could, do all that at the budgetary expense. Some organizations, etc., but will probably do it via some commercial structures. Just to boost some figures, etc. Well, that would be really fantastic, because we could do it together to understand this commercial effect. Thank you very much. It was very interesting to find out more about these initiatives. Do you have anybody from Tyumen here? Could you please extrapolate a little bit more on that? Dmitry Gabotin, I'm from Tyumen region. Yes, we were one of the entities who participated in this initiative, and also worked with all those national certificates. But I should say that, yes, we followed our own way, and it wasn't that easy from the very beginning. Yes, we allocated some funds from the regional budget, and when we're absolutely aware of all the risks that we have. And all the risks related to the certificates. And I should say that at least 25 entities participated in this program. But it was really important because we managed to create very important programs for quite a number of establishments. We also developed and launched a number of programs that turned out to be quite a success. We also integrated those initiatives both with state and non-state establishments, and we realized that we need to understand that there is quite a difference between the state sector and the, like you said, non-state sector. We need to somehow form some clusters and to do something to make them more palatable for our work. And we started to update some of the educational programs. And I would say that what we're trying to do right now is to change our educational programs a little bit to make them absolutely suitable for all the citizens. And I would say that right now we have that. We have already up to 30% of the citizens that have been exposed to such certification program, which is a huge number. We are going to do it and even increase this figure as part of our register. We want to make it bigger. We want it to become a part of our special programs. for the annual cycle. It's all about the price of the certificate. What about your municipality? What about the price of the certificate? Right now, as for the module, the price is pretty much the same. But how do you assess the value? I mean, the price. Now we have a special pack of documents that determines the final price. It is based on your recommendation. Okay, if we don't talk about the model, I mean, what about the spectrums of your service? What about the final price that will be there in place? No, I mean, could you please say it is going to be done in a differentiated way, or how? What about the difference? I mean, from one to another. I mean, the price could not be that different. For example, if you want to be exposed to a course of chess, for example, playing, it shouldn't be that different, and there should be no difference based on, I mean, the personality of someone who wants to be exposed to such a course. And in this sense, I would like to say that we need to somehow come up with the right decision and understand how this structure should be structured. What about certificate, one category, for example? Should it be the same for the same municipality? Can I also ask you this question? Right now, certificates, they're quite different in terms of their price in different municipalities, because we don't like this gap that we have already acquired, and the gap that we have seen is quite considerable. So it starts from 14,000 ruble to 1,200, which is a lot. Because the bigger the city, the bigger the difference. And also we can understand that in Moscow we have more kids than in different villages, and that is why the price can really vary. We will try to smooth it a little bit up, I mean, this difference, but we're trying to do our best to provide our recommendations and to allow people to make their own decision. Colleagues, we have to understand that we have at least 10 entities that can get certain entities from the federal budget, and 75 budget that cannot get any funds from the federal budget. How come? No, come on. It's not possible, because you can get from the donors that are, I mean, something that we can get from the federal budget. No. What are you talking about? No, I mean, I do understand, but at the same time, we have very strict limitations that were imposed from the Ministry for Financial Development, etc. That's in this sense we have to understand that first and foremost we need to be aware of our priorities and understand how we can use our budget in the most efficient ways, how we can spend the money, I mean absorb them in the most efficient way. And that is why I understand that I have certain mishaps and certain problems, but how we can do it in the most efficient way, that's exactly what I should think about. I should say that in this sense, a non-governmental sector is absolutely important and very efficient very often, and sometimes it is even more efficient than the state or governmental sector. And not all the parents can afford to take the kids to, I mean, a kindergarten, I mean, that was subsidized by the official governmental kindergarten, for example, different structure. And when we see it, we try to somehow change the situation and see the right option for different different families. I see this trend everywhere when we see, the situation in different regions. We try to use different practices, different political approaches, but we do it in order to make our approach in general more approach. Yes, I just wanted to say, what about the price of certificate in different municipalities? Now we have a unified certificates for additional education, and I would like to say that just to think about this question that you probably might ask you about. Yes, when we talk about education, the price of such certificates, yes, some people come over and for example, they have this certificate for swimming, for sport, etc. And so when I come over again, I see that all the certificates have been, wasted, and I cannot afford to get another certificate, for example. But we see right now that we can change the number of certificates, especially for the kids that want to have some additional education. Yes, we try to change a little bit, but we had quite a problem with a family with multiple kids when they say yes, they want to have certificates for free at the budgetary expense when they go to 3 different courses, math, for example, sports and music. But when they want to get some additional certificates for different courses, and we see that it has been quite standardized, we see that sometimes it's not always fair, and we understand that some families are more active and they want to have more courses, etc. And we try to calculate it a little bit more efficiently. We're trying to recalculate the cost, the value of such certificates, and to think how it should be done more efficiently. For example, we see that some kids they can be more efficient. Probably they want to take more courses, etc. And we have some standard prices and some standard courses. But in case mothers, parents, they want to provide some more courses for their kids, they can do it, but it should be done on a somehow estimated basis, but it should be done without getting too much burden on their putting too much burden on their kids. This is the work that we're trying to finalize by October. And yes, some money has already been allocated for that, but we want to give it the right absorption and right with our norms and standards. But together with other specialists, we're trying to do that in line with our strategy, together with our community, our experts, etc. It should be done, especially when we understand that. Thank you very much. So there has been quite an argument when we were preparing for this panel. What about the municipality? How it should be done? When we talk about our powers, about things that we can do, yes, we need to, of course, decide on the price of such additional education, and also all those certificates, and the governors and all specialists were absolutely right in saying that we need to develop some recommendations, etc. But right now the situation is quite harsh when we have to be exposed to many questions. For example, in one region we have quite a number of opportunities. In other regions we might have a completely different set of opportunities. Why we have such a difference? This question is not easy, and we need to think about it when we think about forthcoming developments of different projects and laws. But what about equality? What about territory and ex-territory principles? It sometimes happens that people who live in close to border regions, they sometimes have to go and apply for service in different locations, not where they live exactly, in order to get all the opportunities that we have. And one of the brightest examples is Moscow region. We know that we have quite a number of children who live in Moscow region, but they have to apply for services in Moscow, for example.
Ограничение, что должно оно быть или не должно его быть, потому что здесь же есть риски.
It shouldn't be, because there are risks. Money go to other region, and the money go to other region, and it is supported by organization of another region. How to equalize these capabilities and how to satisfy a consumer in such a complicated region as yours? Thank you, Olga, for this question. First of all, I would like to say that inclusion into the supplier of so-called subjects is not only possible or impossible, it's their actually a right, a legal right. And if a supplier turns for a service and he complies with all the requirements of federal and regional legislation, we would include him into the register of service supply, and there will be no legislation limitations to cancel that. But we are very happy that we have such a strong neighbor as Moscow, as it provides very good opportunities to our citizens, and why we should limit them as well as in additional education, as in training of senior generation. Why should we limit them in receiving kind of services in neighboring subject? No way. Moreover, that stimulates our region to develop much more active and provide qualitative services and be competitive. And it's not a secret that at the territory of Moscow there are lots of federal educational institutions where we can get services in the same way. But if a supplier of services should meet all the requirements of legislation in the region, and if he follows all the norms, and the region has authorities to create some special conditions while meeting these requirements, we allow also service suppliers into providing the services at our territory and the territory of Moscow. And we have mentioned that we are in the experiments since 2016 for providing certificates to aged citizens, and we never had any limitations, and our citizens received services in Moscow and in distant base as well. And some services, well, they were truly of higher quality, and their choice was bigger. Well, some of the services were better with us, and I would like to speak about the following thing. When we discussed the issue of distant education with the colleagues, what was related to our certificates as to senior generation, we didn't have any issues in distant training, starting from computer literacy and finalizing with other services. And as to education, when I was speaking with parents, I asked a question: how do you treat an issue of getting service distantly at the territory of other subject? And well, they had different opinion depending on what we are speaking about. There are services like English language can be taught distantly, and there is an issue raised by one director, the issue of quality of measurement of the provided service, the quality. But this can also be coped with. Possibly there is some testing of the system or whatever, and there are some subjects which must have a practical and theoretical part. So as additional education, distant additional education, we'll think about condition which we can specify in this part. Otherwise, limiting competition and not providing our citizens from Moscow region opportunities to have additional education and citizens of senior education at another subjects, no way. And there are even no legal rights. Olga Sergeyevna, and you've said that you establish additional requirements for providing services at specific territory. So we're speaking about territory of specific municipal structure which the citizen comes from, like theoretically kind of Moscow Educational Center providing a service of, let us say, for aviation modeling, and this service is in the list for which you have prepared social certificate in this case. Where territorially this Moscow Educational Center should provide service to a citizen? Well, actually it can be done distantly if it is a theoretical part, and if it's practical part, and that is laboratory of affiliated structure, which is in Zhukovsky, for instance, aviation institution, they have a wonderful laboratory. Of course, the service must be provided at that territory, in this laboratory, because they have no other opportunities. And that is to this example. And if we can practically do that, why not, if there are more opportunities? There is a register of suppliers from other cities, and actually any system of additional education has some part which should be provided at the location of service consumer. If this wonderful organization has a network of affiliated structure, be it Moscow, Tumen, or any other, it will not be a local supplier from legal point of view, but its development of a territorial network makes it possible to provide services at different regions. Actually, it's a good way out for the regions where state sector, public sector is not rich, and it's very hard to count on development of private sector. We see this example when there is demand, when there is an opportunity to develop certificates, and some consumers are ready to enter regions out of and open their territorial platforms. I believe it's time to give the floor to those who are the main in this process. These are parents. So I know that we have such participants of discussion, and dear colleagues, I have a question to you. Well, from your side, how do you perceive the system of certificate? Have you ever used that? What would you recommend to developers of federal law, to us legislators who are going to consider it in second session? Is there something we failed to consider? What do you feel inside the system? Good afternoon, Rostol Yulia, National Parent Association of Yaroslavl region. Well, Yaroslavl region is totally shifting to certificates starting from this year, 2019. And in for additional education, yes. And for us, for parents, of course, this is quite a new thing. Well, first of all, parents receive huge opportunities. Well, to be exact, children get good opportunities to get education in totally different institutions, including private ones. And of course, parents see a tendency in our parental community that lots of parents who could not afford kind of additional education, additional program education for free, they go for paid-based program. They pay more than less money. This is on one hand. On the other hand, parents are surprised why 40 kilometers from Yaroslavl, let us say Nekrasov municipal district, they have a cost of certificate less than by 4,000 rubles per year than the same Yaroslavl or some other region. That is also surprising for parents, and they do not understand how to work with this certificate. And Natalia has already said that actually parents worry that they will not have enough programs and they will not be able to join into some sessions. And what will happen to the children who are not going to use the certificate, not by 50%, or by 10%, or they just do not need this certificate? They will not get this, and they will not bring their children anywhere. And this is a range of questions, and besides, I'm afraid just yesterday I was at parents' meeting, and parents asked a question. There is some activity outside of classes in every school, and whether this outside of school activities is going to be turned into a system of certificates. This is an issue. This is a parent's question. Now we give a child to prolong day group or for outside of classes activities. These are additional classes for a child to be able to wait for his parents and so on and so forth. Whether we are going to have this transition, parents really worry, and whether we are going to have this outside of classes activities, outside certificates. Marina Nikolaevna, it's time for you to answer. Well, certainly not. These are totally different levels. What we do now is done for additional education of children. Namely, we are exchanging information with colleagues from Rostad by the inquiry of Natalia Vladimirovna. We have clear-cut index of what is additional education for children. This is present of so-called license for performing this kind of activity. And if this is individual entrepreneur with some service, and we'll get back to this. And it's not related to activity outside of class. They have personal norms and regulation, but certificate is not used for that. And according to our regulatory base, it is not possible. And whether we want it or not, we'll have to touch upon another question. And colleagues who would like to join, maybe they will help us to get into that. This is a question of quality and responsibility. If this quality was not proper, we gave a certificate to a parent. A parent came to a private organization or to state organization, and there should be no different because the service is provided by people. It cannot be automatized, and we cannot unify that. Anyway, this will be namely the way that it was provided by a teacher if we speak about additional education system. And let us say that this service was not provided in a good quality manner. There are examples of this kind that are not related to social certificate. They are related to our current life. But the person has already given certificate, and a person came to music class, and the first music class showed that a teacher switched on music, suggested to sing, and he is involved into something else. There is no dynamic. After a couple of classes, a child is not educated. Maybe the child is satisfied, but however, judging by the fact what is told by a child, it's not music class. So mother decided to stop receiving this service due to the point that the quality is not satisfactory. So do we have any protective mechanism? What should be done by mother in this way? How she can recover her rights? How she can protect her rights if we face such a thing? So do we have any protective mechanism in today's system, in a future system? Well, we judge from the point that actually the system of certificate is inclusion of the advertising principle, reputation, fight for consumers, and that is the main tool providing quality. Everything will be known next year, what kind of services are provided at which institutions, and certificates will be directed there. This is 100%, and somebody will even have to be cancelled because they say, I want to give certificate here, and they have a limitation. Well, then we'll have to solve this kind of problem, directing them to less popular places, but that will inspire them to enlarge capacities of the organizations which are popular, and this is the main tool. Who can assess demand but for the consumers? Neither control body, no administrative body. It will create quasi-market, right for selection, right of reallocation of certificates to other institutions, but it cannot be left just like that, saying that the market will finally regulate something. There are lots of other problems, but there is such a disaster. A certificate was brought, and the consumer sees that the service is provided at low quality. Draft of law presupposes clear-cut algorithm of actions with administrative responsibility at different stages. Being a consumer, I would, without saying anyone that something is wrong, it is described in legislation, would give a claim to authoritative body which should consider it it in limited number of days, and if it was not considered, to make a check how the services are provided, so to find a confirmation that it is done in a wrong way. And in case of confirmation of these facts, just to withdraw subsidies from the institution which works by certificate, exclusion from the register of service supplier, and actually just prohibition to enter this market. And of course, parent or service consumer can switch the other part of certificate, and if it's a rare case, but if it's a damage to health and life or complete remuneration for this damage, so the draft of law has algorithmized double-checked procedure guaranteeing the service reception at the level of standard which is specified in certificate. Of course, the question is not simple. What should be considered as qualitative service? Of course, lack of claims from behalf of the customer. Well, I thought that I will be taught to paint and sing, and I was not educated properly. Oh well, of course, if there is complaint, there will be a double check and seeing the plan and qualification. And there should be a clear limit between the cases where it depends on who is providing this service, and of course cases when this service is assessed negatively, subjectively. Well, that here we have to elaborate a complicated potential disputes resolution, but the practice can be different. The main thing is that, well, even now, without any certificates, state task, if a person is dissatisfied by the quality of service, can he or she complain or try to get into another institution? Well, another thing that it is not clearly described anywhere, and draft of law presupposes this clear-cut procedure of actions and description of standards for all the subjects, for all the services, how this problem should be solved. Lyubov Nikolaevna, do you view the situation from inside? Because within the project of equal opportunities for children, you keep on monitoring the system of additional education, especially the story with certificates. Could you please tell what are your feelings from this model? And knowing that you have very interesting results, please switch on my presentation. And to begin with, I would like to react to the speech about what parents should do, and to add that we have the right when a parent and the children can change their section inside the school year. And the probation shows that some parents and children use this opportunity, and operators of subjects really provide that, and there are no problems with that. Supporting the worries of National Parent Association as to speculating about outside of classes activity and system of additional education, we are clearly said that these are different things. They are financed in a different way, but life proves different. And worries of parents today are very well explained by the fact that outside of classes activities are being limited. And when it happens in the period of simultaneous introduction of certificate, well, there is kind of human understanding that it can be the situation when one money is transferred to another place. And our task of those who protect children's and parents' rights, to keep on monitoring that and pay attention of our ministry to the tendencies which exist. Well, it has already been mentioned that system of personified financing of additional education is already implemented in 42 regions, and we were trying to reach this result for 3 years, and we started from 9 regions in 2017, and then next year it became 20, and now due to National Project of Education 22 more. You see the number of certificates received, and we assess this situation as a great achievement because we consider the very system of certificate as a opportunity to get a free additional education. We really actively working with this theme for 3 years, and we keep on monitoring that, and we provide informational support for development of this mechanism in subjects at the territory of the Russian Federation overall, because regardless of all the efforts of the state, we really have growth of paid basis sections, and that means that more and more parents tell us that a family budget has some limits, and every year it's getting more and more complicated to educate a child because family budget is not sufficient to implement all the education programs that a family would like to have. So at this slide you see the poll of Russian People's Front together with National Resources of Education, and this is the team which is working within the frames of Equal Opportunities for Children project. We monitor it every half a year. We monitor some things systematically for 3 years, and some newly appearing mechanisms and phenomena we also introduce into a mechanism of our monitoring. And you see average cost of one section for child development depending on the level of wealth of the family. And I should say the parents say that even if parents do not have enough money, and also for only for food, not enough for clothes, and even these families strive for their children to visit additional education sections. And that means that we are solving a very correct task. And first of all, I would like to express gratitude to all the organizers of today's discussion for the opportunity to discuss it at this space of the forum, to express gratitude to Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Education, because we are moving within these 3 years, and there are lots of discussions for the result that we have already come across today. And I would like to emphasize once again, we are related to mechanism of personified financing as a mechanism of provision of free, available, qualitative education. And basically, personal financing in the system of education is not a new tool.
And we also have this per capita financing. In this logic, we also know that certificate is actually functioning in this very way. And I would like to also join the words of the gratitude that was expressed by the government and vice governor when they said that they are trying to actively introduce another aspect in their region. For example, in Khanty-Mansiysk region, when they introduced a certificate for preschool education, I should say that private kindergarten, they really diminish the price for their education at different, kindergartens, and it could be also applied in other situations. This demonstration of such stance, such attitude, it could be really great in terms of genuine attitude towards the whole situation. And of course, when, for example, when we had the situation with 3-year preschool education in kindergartens, it could really be compatible with something that is provided by kindergartens that is provided right now. And of course, it could be important for the quality of our work in general. 45% of the parents right now say that certificates really helped to improve the availability of education. 35% of them said that it's enough for attaining a lot of programs, and also 2 to 8 programs. In general, we can say that the development of additional education is really great right now, and especially in terms of its variability. And now we can see that we can see up to 77,000% right now are implemented in the framework of such certificates, and it is very much positively perceived by parents. So you can see this figure that 33% of the parents say that such certificates are sufficient for them to get access to quite a number of different educational programs. And I would say that not all the parents want to take their kids to, I don't know, 5 different courses, etc. No, they understand that it should be done in a reasonable way. Of course, we do understand it as well. But at the same time, it helps them to get access to different courses. But in case kids want to get a number of courses, I mean, to make them bigger, this is something that could allow them to do that and really increase this figure to 3 or 5 different courses, which is quite sufficient. This is one of the things that helped us to tackle quite a number of issues and to move in the right direction. I would say that, yes, of course, some of the parents want to, I mean, subscribe their kids to 3 or 5%, but others just want to do, I mean, to optimize this figure to 2 or 3, 1 courses. But at the same time, it's really important when they want to have a whole variety of options they have, and the parents, they must be aware of all the rights that we have. They have to understand how they can absorb these or that different budgetary resources that allocate for that matter. And of course, they can keep track of the quality criteria that are available. Any instrument that is used in such a scale is, of course, needed to be supported, and both parents and organizers and kids have to be aware of it, as well as some of the representatives of municipal organizations, and also at the state level and different levels. We have to understand that we have quite a number of problems, and we need to tackle somehow it. For example, in 2017, we see that we could obtain 9% of certificates, and it was quite easy. Meanwhile, in 2019, the figure amounted to 21%, and we can see clearly that this figure is getting better, and the instruments are getting more and more efficient. Parents understand how to work with these instruments, and problems that going down, I mean, in terms of their number, etc., thanks to information provision and thanks to the improvement of the mechanism in general. We can see quite a number of suppliers of such services. A lot has been said about it, and also the information was provided by GOS service. I mean, this is one of the state service providers, and we can see that right now 27% of the parents now perceive this problem as very inconsiderable. They know that it is no longer a problem for them, and now 24% wanted to resort to such services in order to improve the quality of the education for their kids, which is really important. I should mention even the figure that 40% of the parents are now ready to resort to such services in general in order to get access to such services for their kids, in order to better control and to monitor, not to control, but to monitor the process in general right now. Well, I would say that we have quite a good application right now for parents to do that, and if they really want to do that, they can just download this application to keep track of all the courses and how their kids attend different courses, etc., and just to keep track of all the results that they get and the scores, etc. And together with IT developers, we also ask them to provide all the necessary information for some public observers, for other people, just to see the results of all those initiatives, because it really helps parents to get answers to all the possible questions. Here you can see some comics, I mean, the information, very interesting, valuable forum, and they can, I mean, you can see now on the information that is available for all the parents interested in this process. I think that we understand that we want such a national project of education. We want it to be implemented at the desired level. And here you can see some of the very important figures. And I think that we will be able to keep pace with the desired target. And I hope that we will be able to maintain such results in a long-term perspective. And to do that, we also need to keep track of the statistical information. We understand that we have quite a number of different programs, but at the same time, they fall within the competence of either non-formal education or non-state education, and it's not a part of the official statistic. I think that we need to find a special mechanism to also keep track of these things as well. We need to keep track of all the possible courses, of all the possible volunteer movements, and many other things that could help us to improve the quality of educational system. I should say that over a period of 2 past years, we have created over 800 different workshops for kids and also handicapped kids to achieve this goal, and also initiated some of the things in this perspective in order to help kids to develop their own skill. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And you are absolutely right. I think that it's very important to talk about the price of the certificate. It should be equal for all the kids, but I think that it could also be somehow supported by the price, by the state, by the government provided. And I would like to ask Mr. Cherkeska to talk a little bit more about. So you want to do it instead of her? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Olga. I'll try to do my best to really make it up to the quality of the discussion, and I have raised my hand several times to comment on that. I would like to say once again that Mitre Lashkevich, I would like to comment on something that was mentioned here, that this work that was done together with the Ministry of Finance and also the work done together with the regions in terms of the quality of the service, this is something that has been in place for quite a while, and we're trying to improve it more and more. And also state corporations also joined this initiative. Considering the fact that we're lack of time, I would like to say that together with the Ministry of Finance, we need to focus more on quality. We talked a lot about expansion of the number of suppliers, etc. Yes, a lot has been done in that direction. We have been trying to do that, as well as we have been trying hard to increase the number of investors. But today and tomorrow we'll be talking about the fact that it should be done more actively, and also as part of the so-called social control matter. I mean, when we try to somehow assist one of the problems that we have, we try to improve the quality, but to do that we need to more efficiently work with our investors. And if we manage to achieve the right level of quality, then we will somehow try to restructure our work with investors. This is a brand new approach, but again it helps again and again to improve our quality, and we'll be talking about it tomorrow as well. Thank you very much. We understand that implementation of certificates is of course very important, especially when we talk about it in a more comprehensive manner. We of course understand that there are some regions that joined this initiative together with the Ministry for Finance, and as far as I know, the Ministry for Finance, and Alexei Mikhailovich, you mentioned it, you said that we are ready to come up with some final unified economic model model, and in a form of approbation, we will try to do our best to create such a certificate that would be applicable in all the regions. And we are waiting right now for another event that is dedicated to the approbation. And upon completion of these events, I'm inviting you to come over to the next hall just to talk about this, just in case you don't have any questions for our speakers. Yes, right now we need to understand that we have a roadmap, and we have this project at State Duma, and it was accepted as part of the first reading. I think that it would also be adopted during autumn reading, and then we forwarded for our president to sign it. Alexei Mikhailovich, how do you see our next step? I mean, the roadmap. I mean, just in case it is so accepted as part of our autumn reading, etc. What future holds for our region? Well, I would say that it will be put into force in 2021 and 2021, or even a little bit earlier, but there will be a preparation period. Well, it should be done in 2021, but it will allow to also accept certain pre-normative acts as part of this initiative. I would say that they have already been developed, and we have submitted it for some of the readings and the State Duma. It will be done, yes, absolutely, and the number of them will amount to 30 items, and we'll also need to come up with some standard forms that will be submitted for consideration. But I would say that it has already been prepared, and also it can be submitted for consideration. As for the social order, of course, it will be done starting from the month of January, and there is only one requirement, is to publicize number of guarantees that we will be able to meet with in terms of our budgetary expenditures. It should be absolutely suitable for the consumers as well as for the initiators, and I hope that in future we will be able to keep pace with all those strategies that will put forward by our initiators. I hope that it will be done in the most efficient way, and of course we will have to understand whether it's will be done either in form of tender or in form of different law enforcement procedures. But the most important thing that this is just not imagination, it's not a fantasy. This is an integral part of our reality and a part of our budgetary reality. And I think that we need to remember about this experience and to engage more and more regions into this very initiative. So, dear colleagues, you can see that today in the framework of our discussion, of our panel discussion, we've tried to go back that to say that, yes, there are certain risks that they can be optimized, and also we need to remember about the experience of our regions and to see that non-governmental regions and sector, they also have certain support, and they are doing really great. And still, the regions they can decide what kind of things that they are supposed to do and to make their own decisions, which is very important. There are mechanisms to protect regions against different misendeavors, and even more important, now parents they can also be protected despite different things. They can be protected in terms of their choice, etc. We really want to make sure that parents parents when they took certain decisions in terms of additional education, etc. When they try to take certain decisions, yes, they want to be responsible for it, but at the same time they want to be protected and to be absolutely self-assured. They want to be sure that the right is very right, the choice is very right, and that everything was really fantastic, and that they want to make sure that the activity that they have accomplished was the right one. It's a very important mechanism that on one hand allows us to get rid of any problems that can be related to that. At the same time, it allows us to be protected. Thank you very much.